So the Roland Garros French Open 2022 draw is out for the ATP, and basically the craziest scenario has happened. The news is out. Djokovic, Nadal, same quarter, as well as Alcaraz on the same half as those guys, as well as Zverev on the same half. The top half of the men's draw at Roland Garros is absolutely stacked, and Tsitsipas has just got to be laughing all the way to the bank. Say, you guys battle it out, I'll see you in the final. I mean, there's just so much to get into. One of the most lopsided draws we've seen in recent memory in a major for sure. So we're going to take a look at that, all the scenarios, routes to the finals, first round matchups that are amazing. There's just so much to get into. So let's get into it. Welcome to The Slice, presented by PointsBet Canada 2022 French Open coverage.
Oh, he's playing a galactically.
She's been too good, too often.
Oh, it's out to this world.
How's that for quality on play?
Well, people, there is so much to get into this. I think the world's kind of in shock. It's just unbelievable to see Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal in the same quarter of a major, meaning that only one of them will make the semifinals. As well as Carlos Alcaraz being there in the in that half, the top four seeds coming in, or the top four challengers coming in, Djokovic, Nadal, Carlos, and Tsitsipas. I think most people agree on that. And the fact that three of them are on one side and one of them's not is pretty big news. So anyways, before we get much deeper into this, our presenting sponsor for the Roland Garros 2022 French Open 2022 is PointsBet Canada. It's Canada's sportsbook. So if you live in Ontario and you're a tennis bettor, get around PointsBet. They have a great sign-up bonus, and you can bet the tennis, and I'll be giving you guys looks at the odds, stuff like that as the tournament goes on. So shout out to PointsBet for supporting The Slice and supporting our coverage of the French Open 2022. I think I got to decide on if it's Roland Garros or French Open. So I'm going to make a poll. Is it French Open or Roland Garros? And I'm just going to go with one. I think I'm just going to do French Open for this one because I'm North American, and I guess that's what we do in North America. We just take things over. But anyways, talking about taking over, the big contenders have taken over the top half of the draw. Yeah, so what I was saying before, Djokovic, Nadal in the top quarter means the big story and crazy thing about that is, in my mind, in everyone's mind, Djokovic he won his title last year. He's going for 21. Nadal is at 21. He's going for 22. He's going for his 14th Roland Garros. It's crazy if either of them doesn't win the tournament. That's like a big upset for them also. It's even more crazy if one of them were to lose in the quarterfinals. So if you just take Djokovic and he lost in the quarterfinals this year, you'd be like, that's disappointing. If you took Nadal on his side and he lost in the quarterfinals, you'd be shocked because he's won it 13 times. But the fact that they're both in the same quarter means that one of them will lose at the quarterfinals or before. And I think Djokovic fans and Nadal fans are just, I don't know what, you guys just must be in pain, stress, angst, think the draw's rigged. I don't know, but that's a pretty crazy result. And Alcaraz then being in the second quarter with Zverev, super interesting as well, because he's got a lot to prove in my opinion. He's got a lot to prove as far as getting deep in a major. He hasn't gotten super to the second week yet, I don't think. And so it's a weird concept with Carlos as well, who's another one of the top contenders. It wouldn't shock me if he made the semifinals and had a big battle, even went further, possibly won it. We'll take a look at the odds here in a second. People are so hyped up on him potentially winning this thing. But at the same time, he's 19 years old, and it also wouldn't shock me if he lost in like the first, second, or third round. Like they'd be like equal amounts of kind of shock and expectation. I don't even know how to put it, but that's why Carlos is such an enigma, because at the U.S. Open last year, we're like, oh man, he beat Tsitsipas. He's announced himself as being here on the ATP Tour. And now it's like he won Miami, Barcelona, and Madrid, and now he's like one of the favorites to win the French Open. So it's just insane. So let's take a look at the routes to the championship for the top four contenders, who they're going to have to play. It could get messy. So let's start with Djokovic. He's the number one seed, the defending champion, and according to the odds makers at PointsBet Canada, he is the top betting favorite at 3.0, which is a lot higher than other ones last year. So 3 times your money to bet on him to win the tournament outright. He could play, or he's playing Nishioka in the first round, and then he could play Molcan in the second round, which would be interesting because his old coach, Marian Vida, is now coaching Molcan, so that could be interesting. And then you can play Pablo Cuevas in the third round, and then it starts to get difficult for Djokovic. Fourth round, Schwartzman. So that could, obviously, Schwartzman's a great clay court player. That could provide some difficulty for him. And then it's just the big one. Quarterfinals, Nadal. Or Felix Auger-Aliassime if Felix was to take out Nadal. But it's probably going to be Nadal. And that's just a clash of the two biggest favorites, in my opinion, to win this title. So that's the draw up until that. And then you're going to take what comes after that, which could be Zverev or Alcaraz. And then in the final, you're looking at most likely Tsitsipas. So to me, that's a pretty crazy draw for Djokovic again but he can obviously do it because he literally did it last year. He beat Nadal and then he beat Tsitsipas in the final. This time, though, he might have to go through Alcaraz in the middle part. And the expectation, like I said, Alcaraz, it wouldn't surprise me if he lost early. We're forgetting people. He's 19, so there's that. But then it's also like we just expect him to meet in the semifinals. But Alcaraz would have to beat Zverev, and Zverev will not want to lose to a 19-year-old. He still thinks he's the guy who's on the come up. But I don't know. So that's a pretty tough draw for Djokovic, but it's doable because it's Djokovic and he can pretty much do anything. What do you guys think about his route to the final? Let's go next to the second betting favorite, Carlitos Alcaraz at 3.25 yo money. He plays a qualifier first, and then he can play Kokkinakis, friend of the show, who I was been covering all week in Geneva. Nice little run there. Kokkinakis actually playing pretty good clay court tennis. Hits the ball big. Could be an issue for Alcaraz, potentially. Then you got either Harris or Millman in the third round. Cam Norrie in the fourth round. So, let's be realistic. This is not like Carlos, yeah, he's won a ton this year, and he's, obviously the hottest player in tennis right now. But there's tricky players out here, but Carlos is extremely strong, and I think I almost forget that with him skipping Rome. And then he could play Zverev or Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, but most likely Zverev in the quarterfinals, and then it'd be Djokovic or Nadal in the semifinals, and then he'd play Tsitsipas probably in the final there. So insane route, obviously, for Alcaraz to try and win his first ever major, and basically the first time he's playing it with a real, people are thinking of him as a serious contender. So that's an interesting route, and I cannot wait to see how the young guy handles the Grand Slam pressure and almost the expectation that he's going to do well, the expectation that he's going to get to the semifinals. So I don't know. We'll see, but I'm super looking forward to seeing him take on this field. And next, we are moving on to a man that's won this 13 times. We all know him. The third money favorite, though, or odds favorite at 5.0 times your money, Nadal, who is there's a big question mark, obviously, around his foot coming in. In Rome, we saw the pain. He couldn't really finish at his level against Shapovalov, but we've seen reports of him practicing on Philippe Chatrier with lots of fans chanting his name. Everyone's going nuts. Everyone loves Rafa. Pain-free. So if he comes into this tournament pain-free, you gotta, in my opinion, put him at the favorite to win. But his route starts with Jordan Thompson, shouldn't be an issue. Stan Wawrinka next, potentially tricky, but can't really imagine Stan hurting him at this point. Fognini next, or Fognini, that could be, he's an experienced player, although he's not playing great right now. And then Felix or maybe even Opelka in the fourth round, and then obviously the big behemoth matchup with Djokovic, the quarterfinal of death or life, depending on how you want to look at it. That's where it gets super interesting, and the biggest test for him there in the quarterfinals, and then it's either Alcaraz or Zverev, and then Tsitsipas in the final. So tough route for Nadal, but it's not getting any easier the older he gets, and the better everyone else gets and more confident. So interesting route there for him, and the big question mark is his foot. Is it going to be slowing him down at all? We'll just have to wait and see. Lastly, of the top four contenders, we got Tsitsipas, who is also 5 times your money. Same odds there as Nadal to win. What do you think about that? Is that legit? Seems pretty close to it on my end right now. I'm very bullish on Tsitsipas at the French Open. I think he's got unfinished business from last year in the final, being up 2 sets to love, not winning it. So his route to get it done, though, starts off with a super interesting, not so easy first round against Musetti, the Italian stallion. So if he gets through that, then he could play Puig and then Dan Evans, and then he could play Shapovalov in the fourth round, and then either Ruud or Hurkacz, and then maybe Rublev in the semifinals. Medvedev is the logical choice there, but him getting in the semifinals of the French would be pretty crazy after just not playing, also just not loving clay in the slightest. And then he could either play Djokovic, Nadal, or Alcaraz, or Zverev in the final. But anyways, the big story for Tsitsipas is he's probably having a party somewhere right now saying thank you to the tennis gods for putting me on the bottom half of this draw and the top four other contenders on the top half. That could add a weird element of pressure, though, couldn't it? Like of him, like, oh, I should get to the final now. You never know. It can be tricky. He's still young, but he is an absolute menace on this court. So that is that. And what do you guys think Tsitsipas will do? Let's take a look at some notable first-round matchups because that's always fun to do. There's some really good ones, mainly Shapovalov versus Rune. Holger Rune, friend of the show. Shapovalov, also friend of the show, kind of Canadian, obviously Canadian brother. That's a super tough first-round matchup. Holger Rune's on a total high. He's the highest ranking he's ever been. He's an absolute beast. He can lock down and not miss. And that's Shapovalov's weakness when he can obviously miss. And if he's doing that and he's playing against a good clay courter who can be physical and kind of suffocate Shapovalov, that could be an issue. So that's a super tight first-round matchup. Musetti versus Tsitsipas, super interesting because of how much flair both guys have and how much skill both guys have. Ruusuvuori versus Humbert, that's a nice matchup, I thought. And then we got Dominic Thiem versus Hugo Dellien. That's actually a great opportunity for Thiem to finally get a win on his return. He was trying to do it this week in Geneva, couldn't do it. So I think Thiem has a real opportunity there. And then he could potentially get on a little roll in that section of the draw, if you ask me. So, projected quarterfinals, Djokovic versus Nadal, Alcaraz versus Zverev, Ruud versus Tsitsipas, Rublev versus Medvedev. That's the potential quarterfinals, but the big story of the draw, Nadal, Djokovic, top quarter. What do you guys think? How did that happen? What are your predictions? My prediction, I was thinking about this on the train home. If they play again, I think Nadal gets revenge. I don't think anyone in the history will beat Nadal 2 years in a row at the French Open. I think Nadal gets history, beats Djokovic, and makes it to the semifinals where he plays Alcaraz. I do think that will happen. And then I think Tsitsipas is getting to the semifinals, definitely there. And then potentially Rublev also in the semifinals, but we'll see. So those are my predictions to the semifinals. I think it's going to be Nadal, Alcaraz, Tsitsipas, and Rublev. But you let me know what you think. I don't know. There's so much to bite on there. Such a big draw. Thank you guys for subscribing. Make sure you subscribe. Follow our Instagram at @TheSliceTennis, me on Twitter at @TheSliceTennis, and join PointsBet Canada if you're in Ontario and you want to get a little more skin in the game during the French Open 2022. Thanks for being here. Also check out Go Sport for the best bags in tennis and AP Tennis for customized mental tennis training. We'll see you guys here for the WTA draw tomorrow.
He's playing a galactic level.
She's been too good, too often.
Oh, it's out to this world.
How's that for quality on clay?